Welcome to Mindful School Marketing, your go-to podcast for personal and professional growth.
We're school marketers, business owners, and moms passionate about connecting other school professionals with tools and strategies for success.
We love solving problems, exploring new ideas, and thinking outside the box. Let's transform your school and life starting right now. Welcome to Mindful School Marketing. I'm Aubrey Bursch.
And I'm Tara Clays. Today we're joined by our friend Brooke Carroll. Brooke is the principal consultant and coach at Acies Strategies, supporting small school leaders. We've had Brooke on before, but today we're really excited to have her join us to talk about burnout. Welcome, Brooke. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I'm always glad to hang out with the two of you.
Absolutely. We're so excited that you're back as a return guest to our show. It's so fun to chat with you. Brooke, it's so interesting because this topic comes up a lot, but to start us off, can you share, what you're seeing right now in schools when it comes to burnout? And, what's showing up for faculty, staff, and leaders in your work with schools? Like, what are you seeing?
Yeah. So, so just to contextualize burnout a little bit, burnout is a phase along the continuum, the stress continuum, right? And so, we all working in schools is stressful. And so when I talk with coaching clients, when I'm consulting in schools, there's always something that's stressful going on, and people talk about that, and we work through and we problem solve and all those things. And I've noticed over the past year or two, the stress is normal and all of that kind of thing. But there's some people where it moves into it's not really normal. It's not just the everyday kind of dealing with stress. And so, and as you said, Aubrey, we hear about burnout more and more now. And so got curious about it. So I started kind of doing some reading. And so just to put this in context, stress is a physical response to things that happen or things that we think. And the response is a chemical one in our body. So, we get it's the fight, flight, or freeze, right? And the chemicals flow, the cortisol and the adrenaline. And stress, there's some different levels of stress. Stress can actually be good. It's called eustress. And so, I mean, if you think about like getting married or buying your first house or buying a house, or I was also thinking like in this time of year, many of us, have kids who are like in college or are young adults and who are coming home. And I was thinking, there's some eustress there about them coming home and that kind of thing. So that's the positive. We label that and value that positive. And then there's distress, which feels negative and is not so good. And you all know what that is. But then we have acute stress. And so that's where it might be a short-term kind of thing. So my daughter's coming home, I'm meeting her at the airport, and I'm like, oh, how's she gonna be? And so there's a little stress there, some chemicals, and then she arrives and we get in the car and the chemicals go away because it's all good. And it's, that was an acute kind of phase. Or I might get in a fender bender or something like that, and that's distress. But the chemicals kind of fade away because it's an acute thing. What also happens is when there's chronic stress, and you can have chronic stress in your personal life or in your professional workplace. And that's what I'm really kind of talking about here and thinking about is workplace stress and chronic workplace stress, when it's not managed, can sometimes lead to burnout. So that's just kind of thinking about burnout on this continuum of stress that kind of on one end you can think about it as positive stress, and then you can think about it as negative stress or short-term stress or chronic stress or really bad chronic stress. And then when it's not managed, it gets to burnout.
Thank you.
So
Yeah, I think relating it to stress is really helpful. But let's go back to the actual word burnout.
mm,
What does burnout mean?
yeah, what does that mean? So burnout, people have been talking about burnout for a long time. But in 2019, the World Health Organization classified it in their international classification of diseases as an occupational phenomenon It's a syndrome that conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been managed successfully. And I'll just say that some people kind of tweak that a little bit. That the word workplace kind of implies, a professional workplace like a school. And that is true. But we see burnout in any place where it's kind of work. So caregivers at home, could feel burnout too. But anyway, so I'm going to say it again. Burnout is a syndrome conceptualized as resulting from chronic workplace stress that has not been successfully managed. And it's characterized by three things. One is overwhelming exhaustion. So exhaustion that you can't sleep away. Cynicism or detachment. So if you're starting to feel detached from your work or really cynical about the school. And then the third is a sense of not being productive or effective. Like, why am I even trying? I can't make a difference here. So overwhelming exhaustion, cynicism or detachment, and a sense of not being productive or effective. So really anyone can feel this in whatever role you're in, head of school, to teaching assistant. Anyone can get to that place of feeling those feelings. And that then is what we think of as burnout.
Wow. Thank you so much for defining that, because I think a lot of people assume it's one thing, but then when you listed off those things, I was like, oh, I'm thinking early in my career when I was working at a school, working like 80 hours a week. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, mm,
Yeah.
yeah, it can happen
It's
a lot.
different.
Wow.
Yeah.
So thank you for that definition. Now, speaking of, leadership in schools,
Mhm.
we often see a lot of turnover, staff turnover, especially. Like, from your perspective, what's driving like that churn, and how is that connected to burnout?
To burnout. Yeah. I think some of it is directly related to burnout, that there are some leaders. I think some of the challenges that our schools are facing right now are feel really intractable. And that creates that chronic stress that you can't manage or feel like you can't manage. And so I do think some leaders are reaching that burnout place and they're just exhausted. They feel like I'm not making a difference here. I'm going to leave and let somebody else who can make a difference come in. I also think that, and I think that some people are leaving to prevent burnout. Like, I'm on the road. I see it's coming. I don't want to get there. I'm going to leave before I get to burnout. I also think that kind of in our post-COVID era, there is more of an awareness of this kind of thing. As you said, people are talking about burnout more, and we're recognize it, and people are not willing to stay in that chronic stress. And maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's a good thing. And I think that it really forces schools, or schools should be thinking about, what do we do to manage the chronic stress? So,
Okay, so if a school wants to take this idea of burnout seriously,
mhm,
as like a systems issue, not just an individual resilience, because I think it's easy to look at it as like that's your problem.
right.
Where should they start? What are a few organizational changes that they could use to move the needle?
Yeah. So when we look at what are the causes of chronic stress, like what are the major chronic stressors in a workplace? And this is kind of in general workplace, but it completely fits in schools. The top three, the first one is work demands. So if you feel like you have more work than you can accomplish, raise your hand in schools if you feel like you have more work than you can accomplish. Right. And I would just said, when I was working 80 hours a week. So that's a pretty common one. If you have more work than you feel like you can accomplish. The second is about expectations and agency. So if the expectations for your work are not clear, and you think you're on the right track, but you're not really sure, and then your boss kind of gives you a weird look, or if you feel like, I don't have a voice here. Like what I say doesn't really matter, and I'm not part of the team. So that's kind of the second one. Those feelings lead to chronic stress. And then the third one is about culture and climate. And that really is about those behavioral kind of trends, the behaviors that are typical in a workplace, and the feelings that people have in the workplace. And these can be with a supervisor, so it can be this, you can have like a negative workplace climate with your supervisor, or you can have a really good relationship with your supervisor, but like the climate with your peers is not good. So those three are the major causes and major impacts that create chronic stress in the workplace. Work demands too much work that somebody can reasonably do, clear expectations and the sense of agency, and then culture and climate. So to answer your question, Tara, schools and I work a lot with boards. And so from the board level, this is important. And then certainly at the leadership level. And I do a lot of coaching with heads of schools and other senior supervisors in schools. And so, we work on this. Like, how are you managing culture and climate? What does that look like? How are you ensuring that expectations are clear and that people feel like they have agency and their work matters, they're valued, those kinds of things.
This is fascinating. I'm like replaying all my conversations with all the leaders I talk to, and I'm thinking about, like, I'm almost maybe if you could clarify, like, I'm thinking about all the leaders we often talk about, like with small schools and leaders. They have many things at their hat. When you're talking about setting expectations, I think about all the people who don't have clear job descriptions or outcomes associated with their job, their roles. So like they're not sure if what they're moving the ball towards is what everyone wants them to move the ball towards. And then all of a sudden, I've seen it happen. Like the board says something or the head of school says, and they're like, what? Like, what's going on? And like, I thought I was
Right.
over here doing my stuff. So that creates that additional stress. And
Absolutely.
I think that's so interesting. And then the other kind of, I guess, comment or thing, when you talk about I guess that peer, that culture, like
Mhm.
I'm almost envisioning, I've worked in different workplaces. Like there was one where everyone left at 4 p.m., like that 4 p.m. stop time, everyone, like that was the culture. That's what everyone did. And then there was a culture of like everyone stayed and they stayed late. And like that was the culture, like something along those lines can also be culture, right? Beyond like just
Oh,
talk. Is that what you're saying?
100%. And that's how I differentiate culture versus
Yeah.
climate. So
Yeah.
culture are kind of the behaviors and the
Okay.
traditions and things like that. And that was a beautiful example. Like in some schools, the culture is we leave smack on the dot at 4, and others, there's a culture of no, we stay late and we work, hard. And so imagine somebody walking in to either one of those from the other, right?
Mm,
And so climate is how we feel about it.
mm,
So in the school where everybody stays till 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock, people might feel great about that because that's the time that they're, yeah, we're working, but I'm getting to talk to my peers and we're exchanging ideas and it's so creative and that kind of thing. And then a new teacher comes in from a school where they left at 4 o'clock and he's developed a whole afternoon structure. And he's like, wait, I don't want to stay till 6 o'clock. And so that's climate. So that's like how you feel about it. So the culture itself, the behaviors themselves are not good or bad or whatever. It's how you think about them and how you feel about them. That makes sense?
yeah, absolutely. Thank you so
Mhm.
much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Kind of building on that whole small schools with lean teams, many hats type thing. A lot of schools might say, like, well, we don't really have the budget to kind of, do this complete overhaul to address burnout in our teams and everything. What would you say? Like, what are some low cost or no cost things that schools can do to reduce burnout for their faculty and staff?
Yeah. Yeah. So if we think about those three things, work demands, expectations, agency, and culture and climate, work demands is the hardest one to get to. In our small schools, we all wear multiple hats. There's limited resources, monetary resources, materials, personnel, personal resource. And we kind of have to make do. And in different parts of the country, schools, particularly small schools, are feeling enrollment crunches, for a variety of reasons. We've got demographics are shifting. I mean, we've got fewer children, and with the economy, it's just enrollment is kind of a roller coaster a little bit. And so schools have to tighten the belt. And so, saying, well, I want to teach one less class because I'm overworked, or, I don't want to do that after school club or that kind of thing is challenging to be able to change if that's what you're into. That's what your school has been doing. I think that's a board level conversation of it, if the board is taking seriously not burning out their employees. That's a business model conversation. So that's the most complicated one. The other two, however, I think you can do without a lot of money. And as you said, Aubrey, you know, just being clear about expectations, making sure everyone has a valid job description, and then having the conversation about, okay, here's the job description, here's these words on the paper. What does that look like in real life? That doesn't cost anything except time, right? And then I would say the next level of that is, how do that job description and how do those expectations then blend and mesh in collaboration with the other people that you work with? So on the administration, what's the overlap? What's the separation? Teachers too. So that work to clarify expectations. And it's also clarifying expectations about, everything. How do you let people know that you need to take a personal day, or, those kinds of things, those policies and procedures, making sure that is crystal clear. And this is something else I say about small schools. The goal in a small school is to feel like a small school, this close-knit community where everybody feels known and feels part of the team and included, and yet act like a big school. And one of the acting like the big schools is having those clear policies and procedures and expectations. So I think, doing that, making sure, checking in with people, making sure that they feel like they have agency, that they feel valued, that kind of thing. And people, somebody said this morning, we talk about differentiation. We need to differentiate for our staff too, right? And so not everybody's going to feel valued in the same way. So thinking about that. And then addressing culture and climate. I really encourage school leaders to learn about culture and climate. Do your own professional development about what culture means and how it is shifted, what climate means and how it is supported a positive climate. Don't just assume because there's a lot of information out there, good information, helpful information, and leaders have a huge impact in this area, and they can inadvertently make a culture not so good or the climate not so good. So again, you can do that without spending a lot of money. So those would be my recommendations.
Thanks. Let's talk about our audience who do marketing, right? So, talking about marketing, development, enrollment, all of those things in a school, they often carry specific pressure to meet number goals
Yeah.
and deadlines, especially as we come into this season of applications, enrollment.
Yeah.
What unique burnout risks do you see for the people who do that work, and what can heads do to support them better?
Yeah. I think of in our small schools, often our marketing, development, and enrollment teams are teams of one. And they're not really teams. They're just one person, or sometimes even a half a person. Your half your foot is in marketing and half is in enrollment. And so I think I think folks who are a team of one can feel a lot of pressure and burden and responsibility for the outcomes of their realm, and that can create a chronic stress that is, that's hard to manage. And they might not be making that up. They might actually, people might actually, and their heads of schools and others in the school might actually be thinking, this is all you, and you're responsible for getting all the enrollment numbers and things like that, and getting all the fundraising dollars. And that's not really true, and it's not really fair, because although we need people to lead those efforts are truly a team effort. Admissions is a team sport. Development is a team sport. Marketing is a team sport. And so heads of schools can be aware of how their staff members are feeling, the director of enrollment or director of marketing, how they're feeling, whether they are taking on, whether they have a sense of like, I'm on this island all by myself, and people are looking to me to achieve these numbers on my own, or whether there is definitely a sense of, we're in this together, we all have a role to play. And this gets at that, at culture and climate. Is there are the behaviors, here are the numbers you need to meet, come back to me when you've met them? Or is the behavior, hey, here's, we're going to meet weekly and have a brainstorming session, and all those kind of things. And how do people feel? So I think that's, as heads are thinking about the culture and climate on their leadership teams, paying attention to how their behaviors are either making those folks feel included and part of a group, or isolated and solely responsible. I think that's one thing. I think that for everyone, I think everyone needs to think about their own well-being. And this is, stress. When we talk about stress, kind of the other side of that is well-being. And for those of you listening who are in the marketing, development, enrollment, if you're feeling stressed, I would urge you to really do some self-reflection, and then find somebody in the school. Hopefully it's your head of school or somebody else who you can talk to about that. Hey, I feel like I'm doing this all by myself, and that's really stressing me out. How can we problem solve that? So I think everyone does have some responsibility to self-reflect about their own level of stress, and then do some problem solving about it. I don't know. Is that helpful?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Brooke. I appreciate those. I'm curious, oftentimes people think when they're talking about like protecting their energy, reducing burnout, and we think about just as individuals, what we can do. Often there's that, oh, self-care cliche. But like what can we do? What are like practical actionable steps that we can as individuals do to reduce burnout, and how can we fit it into what I know all those school leaders are thinking, like, how do I fit one more thing in my busy week, right?
Kidding me, right? Yeah. Well, and that's the first thing that I talk about right there, Aubrey, is I talk a lot with my coaching clients about scheduling. And I think about scheduling in chunks: daily scheduling, weekly scheduling, monthly scheduling, and quarterly scheduling. And that we all, again, there's a responsibility for self-care, that think about your day. What is it in your day that you need to do to manage your time and your energy? And I think, and I talk about those two things. So there's time management, like, how am I going to get all the work done? But energy management too. Some of us are early birds, get to work early, and that's our best thinking time. Some of us are not early birds, and their best thinking time is in the afternoon. That's when I particularly want to take a nap. So I don't schedule my really intense thinking time in the afternoon as much as possible, right? So think about your schedule. What do you need to do to restore your energy on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on a quarterly basis? So that's the first step. The second step, and I just referred to it, as wellness. And I think of it as putting your oxygen mask on, you know? And I talk about that a lot with the leaders that I coach, is that you cannot be a good leader if you are chronically stressed or have gotten over and shifted over into burnout. You're going to be ineffective. Because remember, burnout is exhaustion, cynicism, or detachment. If you're detaching, you can't be effective, and a sense of not being productive or effective. So wellness is not a like, oh, I'll get to that sometime, or it's a nice to have. Wellness, and this is physical wellness, emotional wellness, spiritual, sleep, exercise, all those things is critical to your ability to be an effective leader. So scheduling, paying attention to wellness, whatever that means for you. And it's not just one size fits all. The third one is ask for help. And that's hard for some people. And you're, it's lonely at the top. And there are maybe not anybody within your school who you can really say, gosh, I am feeling really stressed and on the road to burnout, and I need some help problem solving, how I can schedule, how I can make my own wellness a priority. So find that person, whoever it might be. Hopefully our school leaders have a coach, and that's somebody you can talk to, but find a trusted person who can help you problem solve what you need to do around chronic stress and approaching burnout. And the last one is probably the hardest one, but it's about mindset. And there's a whole realm of research on resilience. And some people are just kind of have developed a resiliency that protects them against burnout. And it doesn't mean that they can't get to burnout. It protects them against burnout. And a lot of that has to do with mindset. And there's also, gratitude and framing and all of that work. And that's a whole nother conversation about mindset. But, so to get back to your question, Aubrey, I think the self-care cliches, like a massage is going to feel good. Is that going to get you out of burnout? Probably not. Is that going to manage your chronic stress? Yeah, probably not. Regular massages that allow you a time to disconnect, change your mindset, that kind of thing. Perhaps that could do that. So I do think it's about everybody taking that step back and saying, what do I need, given what I know about myself, to schedule in time where I can manage my stress.
Thank you. That's really helpful. It is I mean, this season that we're in the world and in work and in schools, it is rife with stress and burnout, as you clearly said,
Yeah.
is part of that. So I really appreciate just the definition too, because I
Mhm.
hadn't really thought about things like being cynical as being part of burnout.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
super interesting. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for all of this great information. We are going to
Yeah.
move into our fun rapid fire questions now. And I know we've asked you these before, so we'll see if they've changed.
Oh,
The
I
first one
can't
is,
remember.
I'm going to tell you. The first one is, if you could put one book on the high school mandatory reading list, what would it be?
I've struggled with this one. I was saying I can't remember what I said before. I think that I don't have one book, I don't have a title, but I think I would love for our high school students to understand about financial management. So something about financial management and managing their finances. So there you go.
All right, last time it was 365 Days of Wonder.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's awesome, Brooke. I too wish there was more in the high school curriculum about finance, Brooke. What is one app you couldn't live without?
My calendar.
Next rapid fire question. What are you reading right now?
I'm reading Think Again by Adam Grant.
Love him.
Having fun with that one. Oh,
And
great
what
piece
is
of
one
advice.
great piece of advice you'd like to leave us with?
Well, I think in the theme of managing stress, take care of yourself. It's important. You all are doing really important work, and we need you to be healthy and strong. So take care of yourself.
Thank you. This
That's
has been-
beautiful.
yeah, this has been great. Really appreciate it. And it's great to see you as always. Where can people find you online?
I'm at Acies Strategies, www.aciestrategies.com is my website. I'm on LinkedIn. I think it's Brooke, or it's Acies Strategies, something like that.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah.
quickly, I
Well, okay,
promise.
good. It's always a pleasure to talk with
Have
you,
a
Brooke.
great
Thank
day,
you.
Brooke.
Thank you. Take care. You too.
Take care.
Thanks for joining us on the Mindful School Marketing Podcast.
We'd love it if you pop into iTunes and leave a review, 5-star preferred. Let us know how you like the show. It helps us improve what we're doing and helps others find us too.